welcome and thank you for listening to the podcast of Vineyard Church in Maryville, Tennessee. If you haven't already, you can always visit our website for more information at vineyardchurch.us. In addition to Sunday's message, we're taking some time for conversations, a sort of look behind the scenes. In today's episode, Aaron and I have a conversation about a lot of things worship nights, the worship culture in our church, new songs, and some of the process involved from week to week. Thanks for joining us.
Well, hey everybody, this is Aaron, and I am here with my friend and worship pastor extraordinaire, David Hawkins.
Yes, that extraordinaire, that's very kind. Very kind.
I appreciate it. It was sincere. It was a little sarcastic, but I still meant it at the same time.
Oh, yeah, I know. Wonderful.
So I'm glad we've got a few minutes here to sit and talk. I know you've been at our church for a couple years now. People have gotten plenty of opportunities to kind of get to know you and get to know your family. But I still talk to people pretty regularly who are like, hey, David was like the guy on stage that somebody recently was like, I don't know why, but I just always thought he's the coolest guy ever.
Oh my goodness.
And I think they said something about your tattoos and your voice,
sure.
And you play the guitar and, things that people do often equate with coolness. And then he was like, and then I met him and I got nervous. Like it was going to be right. Never meet your heroes.
Yep. And then it's like, and then I met him. Oh, yeah. And boy, let me tell you.
But he goes, even cooler than I thought, or kind. Something like that. And then I was able to say, yeah, that's all real, man. That's all real. Hey, we're gonna take a few minutes and talk about worship culture at our church, talk about songs, and I kind of want to let folks kind of get behind the scenes and sort of peer in a little bit on the conversations that we have pretty much every single week that are really normal for us, but if you're not like neck deep in the church world like you and I are, that might not seem super obvious, which is, every Monday morning we spend a few minutes sitting and talking. We check in with each other. How's your soul? Some of that stuff. Yep. Yeah. And we spend the bulk of time saying, how to go on Sunday? How do we feel about, the way things went? How do we feel about what's happening in like the worship culture at our church? Because you and I are both like encouraged by what's happening in terms of worship and celebration, but we're also really eager for more and hungry for more. Yeah. So we talk about that a little bit. Yeah. And then we talk a lot about songs. Mm-hmm. And I'd love to hear you talk about that a little bit, David. I don't know how much, and when I say I don't know, I don't know, because like I said, I'm so neck deep into the church world. This is just who I am, man. But it seems to me like people could easily miss the amount of thought and prayer and consideration that goes into picking songs. Like we're not just grabbing your favorites off of your playlists.
Right. No, we're not.
But there's a lot of thought, a lot of prayer, a lot of discussion, a lot of consideration, a lot of weighing things out to sort of, I think you really wrestle and process before you ultimately settle on, hey, what's the next song we're going to learn at the Vineyard? So what's that process look like for you? How would you?
So you said process, and it's definitely that. I keep many lists in many different locations, and some are shared, and some are just how I process things and kind of think through and even pray through things with lists, which is just something that I found that has worked. When we look at songs like that we have in our current repertoire or hymnal or canon or whatever the word to kind of recognize that, these are songs that we don't even necessarily get to sing as often as it may feel, especially like from my perspective of like, well, I'm here every Sunday pretty much,
you
right?
Never miss.
And
more than one.
As our each week's team, we'll just talk about a Sunday morning. We've been practicing those songs. We've been listening to them. We've come together midweek on a Thursday to put all those pieces together. We will have, by the time we get to Sunday morning, to sing and worship together with this song for the team, it's been a lot of times. So there's a lot, which is a good thing, a lot of familiarity so that we can do all the practical pieces too of like playing the right notes, singing the right words. So there's that. And then as the leader or worship pastor, I've been sitting with those songs even longer to make sure that this is something that we should sing together, that these are words that we need to sing as a church.
And when you say longer, David, like in my experience, just in interacting with you, I think that's more. I think that's more like you've been with them for months. Than
that's fair.
Not even days and weeks.
Yeah, and I'm
on average.
I'm just going to jump around here. But these are. This is probably why I lean on lists a lot, so that I can have all these thoughts and then put them in a list. And
I love
and
that you're a list guy, David.
Right? But so songs when they first come out, like when in like Vineyard Worship or any of the songs that we kind of pull from, there's inherently a lot of excitement, which is good, around brand new songs. Like, oh, this has just been released. Man, it's whatever it is, and like in these musical qualities or whoever's singing it or just the arrangement or all the things, which is wonderful and great. And so that's one way to kind of view these songs. And but a lot of times, well, not a lot, all the time, I'm also listening and kind of sitting with these songs. How does this work in our context? Not just church context, but like our church, our people, our teams. And then what I have found over the years, and it's not always this way, and this is not like a hard, fast rule, but I have found great success or great, like, wise seems like a strong word, but it feels like the thing to do is to give it some time. So a song comes out, great, awesome, it's hitting, it's great, it's on my playlist, I'm listening to it, but like I'm hesitant to say, hey, we're going to do this right now.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I want to make sure when we bring a song in that it's like, no, this is these words. And I'm not insinuating that there are, worship songs out there that are like dangerous or necessarily, I mean, I suppose there are.
I think there are. Yeah.
But like, but it's like, okay, well that's okay. We're clearly looking at that.
Yeah.
But it's also like, okay, well, what does this look like? How long, like, what's the I want the shelf life to be as long as it can be.
Yeah, you're making me think of. I just got back from a long vacation, spent a lot of time with the kids, listened to a lot of their music. Sure. And I don't want to be too judgmental. It's a lot of pop.
Sure.
And what I've noticed is most of their songs I like the first hearing. I like the fifth hearing. Sure. By about the 10th time through, I'm like, I think I hate this song. And I like genuinely liked it the first couple of times.
Yeah.
Like they don't, there's not enough substance or there's not enough whatever. I don't know, but it doesn't like have a shelf life for me. Right. And it's weird to think that like that happens with worship, but it does. Yeah. How much is left when the newness wears off?
Right.
And I think what you're driving at.
Yeah. Maybe that's where I'm trying to like, even like strip down the song. Like, what if, like, how does this work in an acoustic set? Like, how does this work with just a guitar and a voice, or piano and a voice, or like a broken down set where it's like minimal instrumentation? Does it still work? And I think that's a testament to like the depth of the lyrics and hitting the microphone here to speak too about that. Like, you can go, there's a number of ways you can go with like the songs that we sing and the lyrics themselves of like, is this like easy enough that it's accessible? Meaning like, hey, is the hook like, yeah, I can sing that. Like, and we can put them in keys that work, but like there are songs out there that are like, yeah, it sounds great how they sang it, but like she just like was jumping around in like 2.5 octaves all day. And it's like, I can't do that all day. And I kind of sing all the time. So like there's like that muscle is being exercised and then our congregation is like, well, that I don't want to make it, we want to make it accessible.
Yeah. Well, I think of Chris Tomlin, man, like the bottom of his range is pushing the top of mine. I'm like,
and it's beautiful. And it's like,
they're great songs. They're super congregational, but you got to change the key, man, because he's way up there.
Yeah. Like, let's bring it down.
Yeah.
So there's that aspect of like, we want lyrics that are accessible and melodies that are accessible. And then there's also like, this is why like I can't put away my hymnals. It's like, there's such beauty and depth in some of those lyrics. And I've often had conversations where, like someone had referenced like their hymnal in similar, like status as their Bible. And it's like, well, there's To the degree that there is scripture in there, sure.
Yes.
But
Well said.
like, yes, it's something that I don't want to let go of,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like, well, there's new ways to sing our praises and
Sure.
to sing and to tell God how we love Him.
Mm-hmm.
Not only like, and I think I say this often because I believe it, but we sing songs about God and we also sing songs to God, and these are not new ideas, but I think it's important. How do we have a balance of that?
Yeah.
In our Sunday gathering diets and just in general too.
Yeah, and there's a number of things that are getting balanced. So you mentioned songs about God, songs to God, also certain theological themes.
Sure.
Like I think pretty early on, I sat down and said, hey, in our sort of pool of songs that are in, like, there's not enough about atonement in here.
Sure.
And you looked at it and agreed. And
Yeah.
then, we've done it. Or, so there's theological themes that we think might be missing. We're a Vineyard Church.
Yeah.
Our kingdom theology is a significant distinction. Always in our list of songs, there needs to be some songs that speak specifically about kingdom because that's a value that we have. And then beyond that, and I might be jumping ahead of you, man, on stuff. So if I do, I'm sorry, but like, just like tone and style of song. It's like,
Sure.
Okay, we have way too many like super slow songs, and that last one felt like a dirge, and like we need to like dance around here.
Yeah.
Or you might look at it and go, wow, we've got a bunch of campy, really high speed,
Right.
up tempo things,
Right.
and like we need a song to sit and think for a minute,
Sure.
or a song to breathe, or lament, or and so those things are all getting balanced and juggled.
Yeah.
It's a multiple, and sometimes not really competing, but there's multiple sort of tensions to manage. Also balancing with the fact that when we talk about our list of songs that we do as a church, this is not like hundreds of songs.
No.
This is not every song we've ever sung at in the history of our church.
Yeah.
It's more like 50, 40?
Yeah,
songs?
that's probably higher. So it's a like a living list. It's never complete.
Yeah.
Like stuff's getting put on, stuff's getting taken off.
Right.
Again, to my lists, like the Google sheet that I have, like, and this is just me processing things like on, well, it's not paper, but you know what I'm saying, of like, hey, this one feels like maybe it's on its way out. Not for any reason other than like maybe we look over, a year ago and it was played a lot, and maybe so far this year it's like it's just not making its way. But
and also that's a matter of feel too. Like in the Vineyard, we talk a lot about like what do we see the Father doing, and then do we respond to that? And sometimes we go, okay, like there's not a lot of, this one doesn't have a lot of juice right now, but there are other songs that have stayed on that list, that constantly changing, churning list for years and years, because it's like, man, the Spirit's all over it. Our congregation jumps on it. Like it just doesn't run out of steam. I don't know if we'll ever not do All Things Rise. Like it just,
exactly.
It's always great.
So there's kind of different, I look at these in kind of some different categories. Like there's the main list, or it's like probably about 30 songs that are kind of in our heavy rotation of like, hey, these are, and I can get into it. We have a process of how we introduce new songs and kind of like how we do that. But so there's about 30 in that kind of bucket. There's also like essentially a like hymn category of like, hey, these are just ones that most people know. So like things that we might want to do on our like heavy, visitor services like Easter. It's like, oh, well, let's for sure sing either part of a hymn or a whole hymn or something that like people know, even folks that maybe haven't been to church in a while, or aren't listening to the, Christian radio. And then there's also, and this is the line begins to blur between hymns and like I put them as just like, man, these are throwback songs, or songs that maybe I grew up as a kid listening to, or were written, before we were born, but not quite as old. Although like I remember in the hymnal at one of the churches growing up it was a CCM song, and the church, it was a mainline church, someone made the comment of like, oh, I really liked that arrangement, and I forget the name of the song, but it was, and they pronounced the author's name is they mispronounced Twyla Paris, which is an old but contemporary artist, because it made it into whatever hymnal we had and I'll find the song at some point.
Yeah.
But that was when I was a kid, and just remembering like, oh,
Yeah.
like kind of help explain to me like it's about like the content of the song
Exactly.
and the church body, and like so that clearly that song landed well with this person because they thought it came from a long time ago, I guess. But
but not so much.
it wasn't.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And sometimes those older songs, that just, I don't know. It's art, and so
Sure.
in a way, art it's kind of a living thing. It's going to come and
Yeah.
go. It's seasonal. Like you decided, I don't know, a few months ago, I think let's blow the dust off of Holy and Anointed One.
Sure. Yeah.
And like my kids on the way home are like, man, that new song.
Right.
And I was like, funny that you called that new. That song's quite a bit older than you are.
I had one or two.
But it's
similar
wrecking the room.
conversations. Yeah.
Like in a good way.
Yeah.
Beautiful things happening across the room to a song that maybe
I think
some people
it came out in the mid '80s.
I was gonna say mid to early '80s.
I don't know. It's on the, but yeah, that's a good Barnett tune.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh man.
yeah. So a little bit more about these rhythms, just again because I think people might find it interesting. Okay, so we're not talking about hundreds of songs,
Right.
And there's a very long process. There's a lot of things getting weighed and vetted. And this is for you, David. So if you're listening to this and you have suggested a song to David, he listened and he cared, and maybe
I do, and I
maybe
love
we did it,
suggestions.
and maybe we didn't, and if we didn't, maybe it got through like 40 steps, but didn't get through the 45th one
Sure.
to actually land on the list, and maybe it will in the future when we need a song like that. So like, be patient, but also don't hold your breath.
Right. Well, and like I love music and love talking about music, and I love worship music. Just what we do, what I do. So I am always open to and love to talk about such things.
Yeah.
But you're right. There is a lot that goes into how does we're not talking about hundreds of songs, so we got to be really intentional. Or this is how we do it, right? Like, so be really intentional of what ones we're bringing in. Not that it's like some weird club that like, oh well, song made it in, so we got to keep it. Like,
right.
We hold it loosely. Like this is a means to. Ultimately, all of this is a means to worship our Creator. So it's.
Yeah, and to
how
serve
we
our
get there,
church
and-
as well. Yeah.
But as a church, like we're singing these songs because this is something we do together that we worship.
Yeah.
So so we can worship Him, and how we accomplish that. That's the part that that's subjective. Like,
for sure.
Meaning like, oh well, styles of music and arrangements and all that kind of stuff.
So
Yeah.
Along those lines, I'm trying not to paint us into a corner here. Generally speaking, we'll introduce a new song about once a month.
Yeah.
Also, we're doing worship and prayer nights once a month.
Yep.
And then we're now adding to this podcast feed and putting
Sure.
more content out.
Yeah.
About once a month, you and I are going to sit down and
Yeah.
talk about the new songs. So hopefully these things are kind of syncing up. And that cycle's coming around soon. So we've got this coming Sunday, a worship night scheduled. I think Sunday morning or shortly in that range, we're going to introduce a new song.
I think so.
then-
Because the recording schedule of this podcast versus the
Yeah,
air date
I probably shouldn't
I
have
can't. No, it's fine. I think
Hold
we
it all
just,
loosely.
But I believe all of that lands like the news. Yeah, I think it lands in a way that makes sense.
Yeah. And so what we want to do is we want to tell you what's coming and
Sure,
a little bit of
yeah.
why. Here's the new song. And then we're going to have a worship night where it may or may not always work out this way, but like where we've got some time to introduce the song, spend some time with the song, and then when it gets introduced to the rest of the church, whoever wasn't at the worship nights, the idea is like we're kind of ready to get after it.
Right.
Because it does kind of make me sad sometimes. And it shouldn't make me sad because it's just reality where I'm so fired up about this song. You and I have been talking about it for 3
Right,
months.
right.
And I'm about to explode with anticipation. And I completely lose track of the fact that, okay, we're going to now sing this to hundreds of people who have never heard the song once before.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes I'm like, why aren't we rejoicing?
Yeah.
I was like, okay, we're going to give everybody
There's some
a
of those
minute.
like practical, the nuts and bolts of like, oh well, I just don't know how this goes.
Right, exactly. They got to learn the song. So we're trying to help folks know the song in advance so we can get after it from the get-go. So
Sure.
with that in mind, we do have a new song, or new to us song coming out that you've picked. Why don't you tell us about it and some of the thoughts behind it?
It's Generous God, and it's a Vineyard song, which is awesome and great because it's kind of one of our people or a couple of our people. Can
I interrupt you there on that point real quick? We love to play Vineyard tunes for a whole stack of reasons.
Yep.
At the very heart of it is like, well, this is our family. This is the tribe. So that's a real part of it. Another part of it is like the Vineyard is by no means often some theological corner all by itself. We're very kind of down the line historic Orthodox church.
Yes.
But that being said, there are some specific theological nuances about the Vineyard and that we hold really dearly. And we talked about kingdom theology a moment ago. Yeah. And we want to sing about those things.
Right.
And Vineyard songs bring those Vineyard values to bear. And that's another reason why we lean into Vineyard songs more than perhaps we might. Well, more than we do all the other producers of music, and there's a lot of good ones that we really love. Sure. But we do kind of lean a little bit Vineyard. Some of it's also really cool, like with this song, like Gino Ellison wrote this song. Like that's my friend. Like he's a really amazing guy.
He is.
And on the recording, like Tina sings it, and it's like, I know her.
Yeah,
so
it's fun.
It is. It's fun, and it's also like I know Gino's heart behind this. Like I think that's I know where this is coming from. Yeah, because just because you're producing worship music, it doesn't mean that your theology is always spotless or your heart's always right. And not that God can't use something that's, and these aren't perfect people either, but like, I don't know, I love it. But with all that said, and that was all my preamble to make one sentence. So this is called talking to a preacher. This is how conversations with people like me go. But we don't just do Vineyard songs. That's not a rule.
Absolutely.
We like to lean that way, but there's like lots of beautiful producers of music out there, and we're all about
Ultimately, it's like the merit of the song. And I know we spent a lot of time talking about lyrics, which is incredibly important. Another, and this is maybe a bit more nuanced, is like the music. Well, we talked a little about melody, but like the music of it. It's like it's got to be engaging, or is that like that's what music does? Is like it evokes emotions, or it doesn't like create necessarily those things, or it's not about. They're not manipulating anything, but it's like if it's not going to land, like that's going to be hard.
Yeah, and not just land, but like stick with you. That's part of the beauty of music, is that it gets stuck in your head and you're carrying it around. And when I find myself, so for example, when you said, "Hey, I'm thinking about Generous God," well, I already knew the song, but like I'm gonna listen to it like 5 or 10 times in a row,
right?
And then what I find is, I'm singing these words, and it becomes by default like worship that's filling my heart throughout the day, because just the mechanics of it, it's catchy tune, man. It sticks with you, and then you find yourself abiding in worship in a way that you wouldn't otherwise, and that's part of the utilizing the power of music. Like it needs to be catchy. Like it's not, people don't write hooks just to sell records. Like the original idea, like music and worship is used largely to help teach people things. Yeah, and that's why you sing songs in preschool to learn principles, because it sticks in your head.
So true.
And these are words that I want people singing on Sundays, but I really want them singing on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday as well. And Generous God has that going for it. I interrupted you for that whole spiel. Fire away, man.
It was great. I don't remember what I was saying. I was so engaged.
You were talking about the catchiness of the song. Oh, sure. Like the musicality, it matters.
And that's subjective, I think, or that's kind of a like. Well, and when like our teams, when we bring in new songs, like part of our behind the scenes is like, I'll link like the recordings, or I'll link YouTube videos, or like, hey, this is like in a practical sense of like, this is the song, here's the music, the charts, this is the key we probably do it in, that's the key it's recorded in, like all of those like things. But another thing that I hope that I'm communicating every week, and I think I am, is that like we were going to make this our own. Like we're going to make it like we're not going to try to create or copy something that is not us, that's not authentic. And some of that is like,
you mean like from the recording?
Yeah, from the recording. Yeah. Like not change the song. Like we're going to sing the song.
Right.
Well, yeah, we're going to sing the songs. Like
Yeah.
that's why we've chosen them.
Yeah.
But we want it to feel like it's ours too. And I think that's another testament to like a good song, a well-written song that it works.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, for sure. You can, and Generous God in particular, has this incredible, I don't speak the music words, sorry, but it has this range of expression to where I have been in meaningful worship expressions of singing that song when it is like so mellowed out. And then, but like the recording on it, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
The drum fills and the bridge are filthy.
It's super fun.
Filthy.
And I don't know. Like that's where like we will, like, could we do those? Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't
We'll
know.
see.
It's going to be ours.
I can't, but like we've got some great musicians, great people on our teams.
Yeah, a couple weeks ago when you played drums for the first time, somebody came up to me and they're like, "So he plays all the instruments?" And I was like, "Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much."
It does help to hopefully communicate what we're trying to do in those moments, but
yeah,
I'm here to serve, man.
Fill in the gaps.
Yeah.
Whatever's needed. Yeah, I appreciate that. One of the reasons why I'm fired up about Generous God, and this is something you and I have been talking about, like and some of this really is just sort of based on feel, and we don't want it to just be our opinions, but we want it to be how we think God's moving in the life of our church. And this is one of the things, like, I think God is drawing us into a freer kind of celebration, and it's like, it's not that we're bad at that. We have room to grow. And there have been seasons when we've been sort of just on a typical Sunday, it'd be like more or less celebratory. These things ebb and flow like every other living thing. And I think we're in a season where God is drawing us into like a more free expression of joy and celebration when we get together. And I think that there's a stack of reasons why we're kind of needing that now. Yeah. And I'll just hit a couple of them, and then I'll just let you go where you want to go from there because I'm rambling a bit. But I think we don't typically like sing, dance, shout, praise, sing at the top of our lungs. Like that doesn't happen or it rarely happens unless we are in a group of people with live music.
Sure. Yeah.
Although, I don't a whole lot. I mean, sometimes when I'm in the truck and no one's around, I'll really crank it up and belt it out. But like, for the most part, I do that when I'm with a congregation, and that kind of worship happens corporately. Yeah. And like, we had a pandemic, and for those opportunities to worship like that were few and far between and long stretches. And I think I think that muscle atrophied a little bit over time. Yeah. So where we get together and it's like, oh yeah, this is part of worship that like, I might leap for joy. I might shout for joy. It could be super awkward looking. I might dance a bit, you know, the people around me may want me to stop, but it might happen. And it doesn't happen except in a gathered assembly and the saints in praise, like, or at least for me, it just doesn't happen otherwise. And so part of that is like, we're habitual creatures, and like, I think we can get out of that habit. Yeah. And that type of sort of celebration is like, I think we need to start introducing songs more and more that bring us into that. Generous God, for me at least, is like right down the line. Like, let's celebrate, let's go. And then the other thing is connected to that is like, and connected to the pandemic and all the difficulties of just, it's been a rough few years on a bunch of fronts for a whole lot of people. And I think we almost need to be reminded that it's okay to celebrate. Like, I've had stretches in my life, I look around, I'm like, man, everywhere I look, I see carnage of some sort, whether it's physical, emotional, spiritual. Like, people are really struggling. I was like, I'm surrounded by struggling people. I'm supposed to, like, celebrate? Like, it almost feels wrong. Right. And I think we're in this season where the Lord, I just think he wants to reteach us, like, no, it's okay. In fact, celebration in the midst of difficulty is actually incredibly powerful. Yeah. You know, I mean, that's really the heart behind a lot of the gospel and soul music is it's people in difficult circumstances finding space to celebrate and then clinging to that opportunity.
It's that like change of perspective. of like, oh, it's not all about, I mean, we matter, right? God loves us, but it's not all about me. It's not even just about how I'm feeling or what's happening. Like, God is constant. God is, God is who he is. And like when we talk about generosity, like this song, like generous God, like you do exceedingly more than we could ever hope, believe, or imagine. I'm messing up the lyrics, but like I believe that, and I hope that our church believes that as well. And I think we do. But a lot of times it's good to remember it's not always in the timeline that we want, or even we're like, oh, okay, yeah, not right now, but like maybe next, and I don't know, whatever it is, maybe next week, or maybe, in the next, whatever the timeline is, like, well, maybe, but maybe not. But that doesn't change like his generosity and his goodness and his faithfulness.
Yeah.
That's that, like, now and not yet. Kingdom's here, but it's not fully, and what, and to me, what's very like centering or grounding is like, okay, well, in the midst of all of that, I can't figure it all out, but what I do know is that I'm going to worship my Creator, and I'm going to celebrate, and I'm going to encourage others to do that, and a lot of well, I think what we do as like in the worship community leaders or the worship teams, it's like our job is to create that, to provide some structure, and then to lead, to give permission. Yeah. And so that, I think that's another piece of that, of like, we need to continue to practice this and continue to do it. Like you said, it's a rhythm, no pun intended, but like, it's just something that like we need to continue to do this. And yeah, I am so encouraged and excited about what God has been doing and what God has done and continues to do. And I'm like equally, if not more, excited about like, no, God has more for us. And I'm not talking about like stuff or things. Like there's a lot of excitement around the new building and on all the opportunities that'll open up, which is amazing and great. And I'm super excited about it. But like, I'm pumped and encouraged in what I sense and see God is just doing in people's hearts and in people's lives, and just even their, we're talking about worship, but like just their willingness of like, I never used to raise my hands, or like, or not that like that is necessarily the only measure of like, did you worship? It's like, well, it can look a lot of different ways.
Absolutely.
For all the different reasons.
And should look all the different ways.
Absolutely.
You bet.
Yeah. So I don't know where it's going with that.
I mean, I love what you're driving at, though. The whole timing of it all, and this song is essentially, it's elation in a God who is so generous that he does, again, exceedingly abundantly more than we could ever ask, believe, or imagine, or however the lyrics go.
Much better than I did.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
All right. But like, here's the thing: in the sort of the corporate life of our church, like, it's actually a really exciting time, and there's a lot of growth on a lot of fronts, and a lot of excitement. You referenced around the building, so there is a corporate reality where it's like, okay, we should be able to sing this song, and be genuinely elated. But the fact is, that is a corporate truism. It doesn't change the fact that this corporate group is a collection of individuals,
right?
And there are people in the room, plenty of them, who are dragging in the door, clinging to their faith, or perhaps not still clinging to their faith. There are people who are celebrating like never before. There are people who are mourning and grieving like never before. All of those things are happening all the time, and there is, I think, a tendency to say, okay, in the midst of lament, in the midst of grief, that's what we need to do, and we do. We need to hold space for those things for sure. But like, choosing to sing the songs of celebration and again, of being just elated in the faithfulness of the Lord when things aren't great are all the more powerful. I think they're all the more powerful as worship to the Lord. I think of Job, when a series of absolutely catastrophic events hits his life in a way that I cannot even begin to fathom, and I hope I never have the opportunity to ever fathom what he went through. And yet he said, you give and take away, blessed be the name of the Lord. Right. And like up until just a few years ago, that was like a top 10 song
right.
of people singing those words.
Yeah.
Like those words of worship resonated, and I think glorify God from when you sing from the depths in a way that you can't on the good days. You can't from the mountaintops. Yeah. And so in that sense, that worship is all the more resonant, but then it's also, it's all the more healing to your own soul to say, I don't feel it, but I still believe it. Yeah. And we sing ourselves into what we already believe. Yeah. And so I would say, man, if this is a good season in your life, and when David and the band fire up Generous God, then like get after it, man. Let's go. And let's go hard because he is, again, exceedingly abundantly more than we could ever ask, believe, or imagine. Let's go. And then I would also say, if it's not one of those seasons for you, I mean, I almost want to apologize for saying it, even though I believe it's true. What I want to say is like, all the more, man. Yeah. All the more for your own sake and for the glory of God, from the depths, worship with all that you've got, and there's freedom that comes from that. There's something healing about saying you give and you take away. Blessed be the name of the Lord.
Yeah, and I think another piece of that, like the power of gathering together and of being, and I think that's like we're coming out of that pandemic thing and we're getting a bit more comfortable of just of that rhythm of being together. Like there's something about being in that shared space and even the shared time of like church online, where it's like it's not physically the same place, but like it's the same. Well, there's a delay just for broadcasting purposes, but like our internet, we need a buffer. So
right, it's not because we're concerned about people using profanity.
Nothing like that. It's anyway. I don't know. We have smart people who know about these things who tell me this. So. But that we're together. We're singing these words together, and we're like sometimes singing them over each other, or almost like singing on behalf of like I'm I'm gonna like intercede via this worship song, like and sometimes unknowingly of just like, hey, just seeing XYZ person enter into that worship and just really like that was so moving and touching. Could be for for another individual, and I think that's like, I don't know, it's just a beautiful thing.
Yeah, man. I love. To me, there's no replacement for just being in the room and worshiping and breathing the air. It just the sacred assembly matters so much. It does not change the fact that God absolutely moves in people's lives in the online experience.
Absolutely.
Let's see, 2 Sundays ago, I guess it was, somebody came up to me and said, I was at home sick, so I worshipped online, and that was we had stopped in that service to do some prayer for healing, and they got healed, like
amazing
in their bed. They're like, well, I guess it's too late to go to church, but I'm up, because they got healed because God meets us in those things, man. So let me just, this is going to air on the 18th is when this podcast goes live, so which means this coming Sunday we have a worship night.
Yep.
And these worship nights, I want to shift gears and talk about that for just a minute, man. I'm so excited about this. We've kind of been talking about for a long time, like we want to create more space for sustained worship and prayer. And just like we're doing this podcast because we can't quite fit everything into Sundays, we're doing this because we just want to spend more time as a family in worship, in prayer. And this is going to be especially fun because Springbrook's joining us, right? Can you tell us more about what's happening with that?
It's like, I don't know, it's not official, like an official joining. It's more of a like, hey, you are good at this, and I like you, and like you are like value added where you go, and so it's like, well, there's no reason we shouldn't do things together when it makes sense, right? And so it really it's that like I'm a big fan of like just invite people. Like, the worst thing they do is say no thanks, or I mean, but you know what I mean. Like that's usually all that happens, and so extending that invitation and got a couple of yeses. I'm like, awesome, this is going to be great. And then it feels like a win too. I know we're different venues and still all one church, and that just feels like a no brainer. Like let's do stuff together. And then we can like learn from each other too.
Yeah.
Like, hey, what are you doing there that works, and what questions you have for us, or
That's right. So this coming Sunday night, we'll be worshiping together. Springbrook family is going to be joining us. Some Springbrook folks are going to be up there on the band as well as we worship together. And we're going to sing "Generous God," right? We're going to work our way through.
I can't see why we wouldn't.
Okay, it is. It is in the expected
we haven't
plans.
crafted that set list yet, but I know it would make sense for it to be there.
Yeah.
I'm sure it will. Yeah.
Good deal. And then also in the show notes for this podcast, there'll be a link or links to listen to the song.
To the song, and it's definitely worth a listen.
Yeah, I just want to encourage folks to get to know the song a little bit, spend some time with it, so that when you and I, after we spend all this time with the song, we're ready to get after it. You can get after it with us instead of just learning the song. And it's okay if you don't know the song, but if you do, it's just a little bit more fun.
And
so
it's not a crazy technical one. I mean, it's fun, but it's essentially like 3 parts. So sections, verse, chorus, and a tag.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's good.
Yeah, it's an incredible tune. So that's coming up soon. More time for worship on that night and celebration and prayer, as God, I think, is just leading us to lean in as a church. He's leading us to lean into all of those things. So I'm excited about what we got coming around the corner. So David, thanks for taking some time to talk with us about worship.
Yeah, I'm excited. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, man.